Hello, my name's Dr. Tony Rickards. I'm from Curtin University in Western Australia, and I'm going to be introducing Professor Michael Menchaca today to do a presentation. Now, it's quite a scary thing being up here. I've just done a presentation downstairs in a little cosy room, and now this is a big room with the same number of people, so hopefully it fills up a little more. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about Michael. I had a discussion with a colleague of his last night, Betsy, and got some secret information, some of which I'll share and some which we shouldn't. Okay. Michael also should be congratulated because he's recently become a professor, so I think that's a great achievement. He's moved from Pepperdine University and now is at Hawaii in the Department of Learning, Design and Technology. He's coordinating the online masters, and from what I can see in the online information I've seen and talking to Betsy, he's also a very proactive community building advocate. So that's one of the things that social networking is very good for, but not often taken up on. He's also an avid conference goer. If you look at his CV, there's a long history of contribution to conferences, and today he's going to be making a contribution to EdMedia. He's also engaged with Montessori pedagogy and is a specialist in educational technology. So over to Michael. I look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the nice introduction. Aloha, everyone. Sing to me of the man, muse, the man of twists and turns, driven time and again off course, once he had plundered the hallowed heights of Troy. That's Odysseus. That's Homer talking about Odysseus and his long trek in the Odyssey for 10 years after he sacked Troy. I have my favorite Odysseus. I'm wondering if you have your favorite Odysseus as well. Could it be Sean Bean, the most recent Odysseus? Perhaps it's Armand Assante of the famed television version of Odysseus. Or perhaps it's the classic Kirk Douglas of the old days Odysseus. Well, I'm kind of curious, so my curiosity piqued. Maybe you like to vote for one. Get out your smartphones, your laptops. I think it'll work. We'll give it a try. Go to flisti.com, FLISTI.com/P/23NK, and give a vote. And we'll see who's the all-time best Odysseus. Let me see if I can get there. Oh, it is working. So cool. We have, and I'll just keep reloading this. Oh, we have vote for Armand, a lot of Kirk Douglas, and one Odysseus who? So that's a good one there. And more votes. Excellent. Cool. So it looks like Kirk Douglas, definitely the winner of the all-time best Ulysses. Some people say Ulysses, some people say Odysseus. But why do I bring Ulysses, Odysseus into a talk about educational technology? Well, I want to talk a little bit about the concept of Xenia today. So the concept of Xenia was the Homeric ideal of always being the good host. But the interesting thing about Xenia is that it went two ways. It wasn't just about the host's responsibilities, it was about the guest's responsibilities as well. So as a guest, you had to ask for things if you needed them. In other words, the ancient Greeks didn't like it if you assumed that they should know what you should need. Actually, it was important as a guest in an environment to ask for what you need. So that is one of the concepts I like to get across to my students. If you need something, I can't provide it if I don't know what it is. So in a good Xenia situation, then please let me know what it is that you need. And another important concept of Xenia is that the guest also has responsibilities, and that's an important part of the concept, is not to overburden the host. So the host has a limited amount of skills and abilities as well, and it's important not to overburden the host. But the host definitely has responsibilities as well. So providing food and drink, and providing a place to stay, providing a place to rest one's head, providing a good listening post. A good host was a good listener. And a good host never really asked who you were until the host took care of you. Always take care of your guests first, and then go into the business. You know, make sure those basic needs are taken care of. So that's something that we should think about in online learning as well, is that it's okay. I think we're so caught up in content sometimes in product is that we don't realize that process is an important part of any learning environment as well. And taking time for process can have long-term benefits that one doesn't immediately see in the very beginning when one takes time out of a very tight schedule to do something that might involve a considerable amount of process time. But why was it important to have this concept of Xenia? Well, in ancient Greece, if you didn't, you suffered the consequences. Okay. So there was good Xenia. The Phaeacians were a good example of that. This is on the west coast of Greece. So this was basically Odysseus' penultimate stop, his last stop before he went back to his homeland to reclaim his rightful place. And so he went there, and they had a nice get-together, just like good hosts do. And they had a bard, and he played a song, and Odysseus began to think about his homeland. And he was embarrassed. He was crying, but he was trying to hide his tears from everyone else. But the host noticed. The host noticed, wow, Odysseus is really sad. So what does the host decide to do, being a good host? Hey, let's have some contests. We're going to distract Odysseus with some contests. He'll forget about his homeland. He'll have a good time. I'm going to be a good host. So now out we go again and test ourselves in contests, games of every kind. So our guest can tell his friends when he reaches home how far we excel the world at boxing, wrestling, jumping, speed of foot. So all of the important Olympic ideals of contests. So they were going to take care of him. Very important idea.
The colors of the sea, find your eyes with trembling mermaids, and you touch the distant beaches with tales of brave Ulysses, how his naked ears were tortured by the sirens sweetly singing, for the sparkling waves are calling you to kiss the white lace.
So obviously tales of brave Ulysses were important. So Odysseus responds in kind. He decides to tell his tale of woe in very specific detail. Well, they've shared with me, it's my time. And he compliments them as well. May the gods rain down all kinds of fortune on your lives. Misfortune never harbor in your homeland. So that's the good. So good Xenia, rewarded by good guests. Bad Xenia. Okay, here's the classic example of Homeric bad Xenia. This is Antinous, one of the main suitors, wooing Penelope, overeating, overdrinking, trying to kill Odysseus' son Telemachus, throwing a chair at the disguised Odysseus, and that's Anthony Quinn, by the way, and one of his best roles is Antinous. So with that, he trained a stabbing arrow on Antinous, just lifting a gorgeous golden cup, loving cup in his hand. So this is what happened when you have bad Xenia.
First among the suitors, first in pride, first in arrogance, you will be the first served today.
Not a good thing to have bad Xenia. That's the bad Xenia. There's the ugly Xenia as well. Polyphemus, the Cyclops, who took the gifts that Odysseus gave to him and then proceeded to eat his men. So Odysseus answers in kind. Takes out his eye, and of course that is the start of a very bad, long 10-year trip for Odysseus. It's interesting though, so you see that bad Xenia can lead to bad situations. Well, how is this related to online learning? Well, let's think about the perception of online learning these days, okay? So I went to popular media, I kind of Googled, and okay, what do people think about online learning in general? I'm just kind of curious. Well, one of the things that I discovered was 22 Jump Street, a movie that I watched last year. And interestingly enough, in this movie, they get to go back to college. So the main lieutenant says, all right, for your next assignment, you're going back to college. And they're so excited. You see them jumping in down. Oh, we're going to party down. We'll do shots, whatever. But no, it's an online university. So they're looking at very banal lectures about yin and yang. And you could just see in their eyes the total disappointment that they're in an online. Oh, it's horrible. So this is what popular media thinks of online learning. Banal lectures signifying nothing. And then recently we had this MOOC at the University of Zurich where one of the professors decided, as professors do, it is their academic freedom right, to do an experiment. So he had this MOOC going, and then he decided, I'm just going to delete all of the content and see how my students react to not having content, to see whether they would actually engage in lectures. So he actually had, from his standpoint, a very appropriate reason for doing this. But of course, in a MOOC and a massive course, it led to unfortunate situation as well. So should massive teachings, the new skills of teaching that we have to have in online environments, should it include deleting your MOOC? And this here, conventional wisdom, overwhelmingly negative. I have a dear technology friend, a friend that works at Sacramento State University that posted this on my Facebook line because I do MOOCs. I always talk about MOOCs, and he was like, dude, say MOOC one more time and just forget about it. I don't want to hear about it anymore. It's like, okay, well, these are important things. But what's your take? So let's do poll number 2. Generally, what's your perception? So I want to get perceptions in this room of online learning. In general, is your general perception of online learning that, for the most part, it's pretty good? Is your general perception is that it's mostly ineffective, not effective? Is your perception is that it's ugly, the sites that you go to, it's not well designed, so not necessarily from a content-wise, but from a look-wise as well? Or, you're not decided. So once again, go to flisty.com/please/23nm, and we'll see what people think in general. See what kind of voting we have. Put undecided online. Okay, so for the most part, a few goods, a few uglies, definitely, and several undecideds. One bad there, so I'll give another few seconds here. There we go, good voting, excellent. So in general, kind of evenly split almost. Many generally good, many undecided about it. Definitely a few with ugly and bads as well. We got 7, 7, and 7. That's pretty good, actually. That's kind of right down the border there. So you can see that the general perception of online learning, the popular media, is not necessarily that good. So we have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of reasons for that. You know, some of the approaches that I take about how to support and engage and design online learning, it's not really rocket science, okay? So if anybody recognizes that, where's that from? How far back do some of you technology people go? Anybody know what game that's from? Oregon Trail, thank you. I knew we had some classic individuals. We don't call them, we're not old around here, we're just classic. So my approach is that you have to be a good host, okay? It seems simple, but you know, if you look at online learning, if you Google it, if you look at research, if you go to journals, there's lots of studies, there's lots of data, there's lots of ideas, there's lots of disillusionment, there's lots of disagreement. So, you know, something's going on here. It's somehow this is really complex, and it's something that we have to come to grips with. But, you know, what do some of the latest statistics say about this? Well, if we look at the numbers, yeah, that's confusing. Boom. Well, let's focus in on a couple of things here. So if you look at these are students taking at least one online course. So in the fall of 2002, and this is from the Babson Research Grade Change, it just came out in 2014, so pretty hot off the presses statistics here. About 1.6 million students took at least one course in the fall of 2002. And in the fall of 2012, that was almost 5-6-fold at 7.1 million. So a lot more students taking classes. So whether the perception is good or bad, people are doing it. If you look at the percentages, every year the percentage has grown louder of online enrollment as a percent of total enrollment. So as of 2012, a third of most students' courses are in an online situation. That's pretty phenomenal number. 1 out of 3 online enrollment as a percent of total enrollment. So a third of the enrollments of courses that we see are online. That's really, really high. So that's pretty surprising right there. So we think about MOOCs in specific, all right, status of MOOC offerings. So 2012, 13, 14. So you see there what this shows is that every year the number of institutions offering MOOCs has grown. Okay, now the number of institutions planning to offer MOOCs has actually gone down in the last year. So maybe they're not quite as hot as they used to be. But that doesn't mean that they're going away. There's still plenty of institutions that are planning on doing MOOCs. Maybe there's going to be a MOOC 2.0. Maybe we'll have some other kind of understanding of what the next MOOC should be or will look like. So that's very, very interesting. So yeah, a little bit of drop in terms of planning of MOOCs, but definitely a steady rise in the number of institutions of offering MOOCs. If you look at chief academic officers at institutions, you see from, 2002 to 2014, we go from 50% to 70%, a 20% gain in chief academic officers that believe that online education is mission critical, okay? So from about half to almost 3/4 of chief academic officers. So it's not something that's likely to go away anytime soon. This is also from Babson Research. This is from the NMC Horizon Report. A lot of stats there, but what I want to hone in on is in the midterm in 3 to 4 years, what are a couple of things that are trending, so to speak? So we see that the proliferation of open resources, open environments, and this includes MOOCs. MOOCs are by definition supposedly open. If we look at the origin of the MOOC, it was to provide a large capacity of quality learning for free, all right? So it's translated into a lot of different types of things, but the ideology, the initial goal, the thought was that, well, we could provide world-class education, we can provide it for free. So maybe it isn't necessarily exactly stuck to that original ideals, but that was the original thought for it. But definitely OER is something that's going to grow, and there's an increasing desire in higher education, probably spurred by how prevalent this was in K-12 learning to measure everything, right? Okay, so we're at the point now where the data, statistics, measurements, it's just what the administrators, what the accreditors, what the students, what the parents, it's what people are demanding, whether we like it or not. This is what people are demanding, that we show that our learning is making a difference in some fashion. So something that we need to address. So what can good hosts do? Okay, well, these are all some of the ideas, some of the approaches, some of the research that I've done. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to share with you some of what I've done over the years. I've been teaching online since 1997. So that's a pretty long time for an online instructor. I started at Pepperdine University, taught online there in their online master's program, and then I went and designed my own online master's program at Sac State University, and then I went over to University of Hawaii, collaborated with some colleagues there to design our continuing online program. And we're just starting in the fall our first hybrid doctoral program and I'll be coordinating that as well. So lots of progression, lots of experience with doing online learning, and most of my research has been done in this particular area as well. So obviously we want to I got to keep that to 7 seconds. I'll get in trouble with Disney Company. So there we go. So it's really important to understand that you have to be a good host and that you have to have good guests. So one of the ways I translated that, I'm Hispanic. My family traces back to Spain and Mexico. So from my standpoint, one of our ideologies close to the Homeric ideology is mi casa es su casa, the idea that my house is your house. So that's an important idea. It's something that we take very seriously in our culture. It's something obviously that has Homeric values. So I just translated that into my research has shown that there are these really essential elements in every single learning environment, all right? So that if one of these is missing, it's problematic. That's what my research says. So content obviously has to have compelling content. We want to include multimodal learning with the new brain research showing how we can do dual processing. That includes video, that includes sound, that includes graphics, it includes good visual design, all of those things being very important. So compelling content, asynchronous tools like discussion, having to be able to do discussion offline using whatever discussion software systems are available. Having a synchronous component, which is probably one of the most challenging components to try and figure out how to thread in an online environment, and that is to try and have people in the same place at the same time. But from a community building standpoint, this is something that, if taken out, can be very problematic for students working together. So having some kind of a synchronous element, even if it's something that you offer as extra, like I'll be here from 4 to 6 to give a lecture and people can come or they can listen to recording. That's how I handle it. I don't make them come, but I find that about 70 to 80% of my students actually do come to my synchronous sessions. And then having quality assessment as well. Students want to have feedback. This is also one of the most difficult things about MOOCs as well, is providing feedback or figuring out how to provide quality responses. So the research that we've done has indicated that students want multiple delivery methods. They don't want one place to go. That's what people think. But when we've tried it different ways, we found when we've asked them, I actually like having different tools that are special for doing whatever it is that is most appropriate at that time, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, than one tool that maybe does a lot of different things, but not all of them just as good. All right, so, and multiple delivery methods as well. One of the really interesting things that we discovered is that when we asked students what their favorite system was, an equal number of students said that they appreciated synchronous as asynchronous. Some said discussions, some said the audio conferencing. And this was without prompting. We didn't ask them to check a list. We asked them open-ended, what was your favorite thing? And almost half and half between those two tools. So if you think of that from the example of a student, imagine a student, Miguel, really likes to read and write, gets in there late at night, likes to process, likes to think, is a very good writer either on the fly or taking his time to do reflection. And we have Hector that just absolutely hates writing. It's just difficult for him. It's not his favorite thing. He struggles with it. He's not as successful at it. So in an asynchronous environment, great, that's great for Miguel. It's not so good for Hector because he has challenges with the writing. Same goes true in a completely synchronous environment. Perhaps Hector is one of these people that's just a social person, likes to go out there and chat and meet with people and talk them up. And Miguel he's just likes to be on his own. He likes to go into his cave. He likes to have his own time. He likes to think. He likes to participate, but he likes to participate in his own way, and maybe he's not as comfortable as doing it live, okay? So that environment, bad for Miguel, good for Hector. So think of it from the standpoint of having asset classes. So for those of you that might be savvy investors, right? We know that you don't rely on stocks only. If you got all your money in stocks and it crashes, you're in trouble. Well, you don't put it all in bonds either as well, or real estate or whatever. So think of this as a situation if you provide multiple methods of tools, multiple methods of delivery, you have the greatest chance of meeting that middle area. So some people won't be totally happy either way, but that's compromise, right? When no one's absolutely happy, that's compromise. So in a quality online environment, I would say that there has to be some combination of these different approaches to allow for the different types of students that are going to be involved in using and in learning in whatever particular environment you're trying to deal with. So I like to use that particular, diversify your portfolio. This isn't important other than to say that I have more on this approach. I'm going to share a link in just a couple of minutes that talks about this. So I do have a self-guiding MOOC-like structure that you can go through if you're interested in learning more about how to incorporate this approach into doing your online learning. And so I like to talk about the content, the asynchronous, synchronous assessment, but then to think of it from the standpoint of what is the learner experiencing, what are the considerations that you should have as a designer, or you might have a designer. I'm lucky enough in some of the courses that I collaborate to design to actually have designers. But most of the time we're instructor designers at the same time. We're doing both. We're taking on both roles, wearing both hats, very common. So as a designer, what should I be thinking about these different categories? And as an instructor, what should I be thinking about these different categories? And what kind of research and standards support what it is that I choose to do, what I choose to implement? So let's just take content. You know, what is the essential, from the learner's standpoint, what is essential content? How will the learner view? How will the learner consume that content? And that lets you start thinking about the kind of decisions you want to make about how you want to deliver it. Is it all going to be on PDFs? Do I have the ability to have some recorded, or are there YouTube that I can find, or is there other materials out there, multimedia materials that I can incorporate? And as a designer, am I going to have to create some of these materials because not everything that I need is existing? And as an instructor, how am I going to utilize these materials? And you kind of think of that from on down the line. So, but some of my colleagues say, well, that's a pretty simplistic model. So do you have a more complex framework that takes into account some of the other types of success factors that might be prevalent in online learning? Well, certainly, okay. So if you want the hardcore research approach, fine. I have articles on that too. So this is a model that we built. This is from our distance education article that came out in 2005, 2006, I think. And so what are the 5 essential success factors? And this is from a lot of studies that we did on different students in different environments, and meta-analysis of other studies as well, including some studies that we did. And we found that there's several success factors. There's human success factors, there's course success factors, there's technology success factors, there's leadership success factors, and there's pedagogic success factors. So I'm not going to go all over all of those because you can find them in my CV if sometime you really want to check it out more specifically. You can do that, but these are very important considerations when looking at a framework. You're trying to build a more robust, more complex learning environment. One of the things that we did related to these success factors was look at social network analysis. So this is complex, but I'm going to break it down for you. So basically what we did is we took 12 cohorts of students over 10 years, and we did multiple analysis on these students. So we asked them open-ended questions, we asked them Likert square questions, but we also asked them how they made connections with each other at various times in the program. So at the beginning of the program, who did you know? Who did you interact with? Who helped you? Who did you help? At the middle of the program, at the end of the program. And so one of the interesting things that we find is if you look at some of these numbers here, so if I show the two if you look at the left half, so the far left graph is during the program with the leaders, how students connected to each other. And you see that there's lots of connections there. But most of these connections are through the leadership, meaning the faculty or the administrators of the program. So the second graph from the left shows the number of connections. And so that drops from 681 to 379, or a drop of about 44%. So that's a significant drop. So without the leadership during the program, connections were weaker. And that's something that seems pretty obvious, that the leadership was the main reason why these students were connected with each other. But one of the things that we focused on during the program was creating a community of practice, was social skills, social networking, getting students together, promoting situated learning, promoting community of practice. So what we noticed afterwards is, if you look at the third one, after the program with the leaders, there was still a lot of connections amongst the students and amongst the students with the former leadership. These are students that have graduated already. And then the last graph is after the program, if you took us out of the equation, what we found is that there was almost just as strong connection of those students as with the leadership in the beginning. So there was very strong ties between cohorts. So we're not just measuring the students within a cohort. We're talking about how we created somehow, just by focusing on the community of practice, an environment in the particular regional area where the students that graduated this program began to know each other, began to hire each other, began to work with each other, began to collaborate with each other in community situations, in county offices, in school districts, in the university, and in those areas. So you see that the connectedness was 0.176 at the beginning without professors, and 0.425 at the end without professors. So that's a fourfold increase, quite a bit of connectedness there. And then the drop after the program with the leaders, without the leaders, with the leaders, once you have taken them out at the beginning, the connectedness dropped over 40%. Whereas once you took the leadership out of the equation after the program was completed with these same students, the connectedness only dropped about 25%. So students were still communicating with each other. So that showed to us that we had a model somehow that was very successful, this idea of being a good host, of promoting community of practice, of focusing on situated learning and on social learning. It seemed to be working well. But now everything's all about analytics, all right? I talked about the fact that measurement is something that's going to be very important, something that we have to do, something that we have to come to grips with. Well, one of the great things that you can do when you build these systems is that you can build analytics into the system, or you could use analytics that are already there. And basically, the nerd definition, the discovery and communication of meaningful patterns in data. So we're just looking at data. We're looking for interesting patterns in the data, and we're trying to think, what can we do to help us become better hosts with this data? It's really that simple. So we can take server data. One of the approaches that we take is XAPI, Extensive Application Programming. And this is just the analytics that provide the ability to gather data straight from the server in a complex fashion to see how students are relating to the material, but also how they're relating to each other. So you can look at discussions, you can look at which discussions were most successful, you can look at the depth of discussions, you can look at what the students were looking at, what the students were attending to, what videos they actually watched, what videos they hit pause and then they skipped on to somewhere else. So there's just a lot that's built into that. And then you can actually visualize this data as well. I'm lucky that I have a partner, I have a collaborator, I have a design group that we work together. I'm building this MOOC. So this is the MOOC that I teach. We built it by hand using WordPress. Actually, I didn't build it. The distance course design and consulting group at the University of Hawaii. We did this as a collaborative team between them and the and the Department of Learning, Design, and Technology. So everything is built with WordPress. Sometimes we use Google Docs as well for some of the interactivity that we want to do. But while we were designing it, we started to think about what are the kinds of things that we need to know about our students. And one of the first things we thought about is that one of the main gripes about MOOCs is the tremendous dropout rates that MOOCs have. And it's the single most factor that people point to as the failure of MOOCs. But we thought, well, a MOOC is kind of a formal learning, but it's kind of an informal learning as well. What if people take MOOCs and they don't care if they finish or not? And so we're measuring something that really isn't something that they consider to be important. What if we just ask them, did you just want to look at the content? Did it fulfill your needs for looking at the content? Did you just do a couple of the assignments? Did you submit anything for feedback? So we're asking all of these kinds of questions to think about MOOCs from a different perspective and not focus solely on whether they got to the end or not, but think about, well, did they get what they needed out of that? Were we good hosts? Did we provide them with the basic food, drink, and sleep that they needed, and they went away happy, and they continued on to Ithaca? Perhaps they did. So some of the things that we built into the MOOC is students could self-check their completion percentage. So here's module 1. There's a time, always a time frame, how long it's going to take. That's the clock icon. There's the readings, that's the book icon, and there's the assignments, and let me show you how that breaks down. So if we went into the first module, the first module should take approximately 10 hours. There's 3 readings in the first module. There's 1 assignment in the module. There's the objectives for that particular module. And then the students can go in there, and you see the circle there, boom, well, let's go to the next one. Okay, we can check it. We'll know from analytics whether they looked at it or not, too, but we also wanted to give them a way of checking their own tracking, their own completion, so they could check whether they read it or not. And then you go back to their front page, and now, boom, it tells you, okay, you're 25% complete with this particular module. Gives you an idea of where you are in completing that. Same thing with assignments as well. You could go in there, click on the assignment, do on the assignment, check that you did the assignment, know where you are. And then we added this other feature that we wanted to make our MOOC better, but what we discovered from an analytics standpoint was this was the single easiest way that students can communicate with us anonymously to provide actual useful feedback. Versus all of the other mechanisms, even though our evaluation was anonymous, confidential, it's still tied to their login and whatnot, so, you could drill down and discover probably if you looked hard enough. We didn't do that. But this one was just boom, it went up there, it posted, it wasn't tied to their login. And what we discovered is they were brutally honest with this particular, and that was great, that's what we wanted. So we wanted them to rate each module on a 5-star rating, okay? From 1 to 5. What did you think of this module? Boom, so easy. They were so happy. Well, I gave this one a 3 because, and then they could put their feedback right in there. Oops, right in the square as well. So, and they would get the average rating for this. Oh, other of your peers thought that this module was a 3 out of a 5 or a 4 out of a 5, or we got one module that went up to 4.5. We're like, oh, this was a cool module. Happened to be the last one. They were finishing. Okay, so they're done. They're happy. Interesting. But the kind of feedback that we got, well, I found it hard to do this. I didn't understand this. I couldn't find this. So we got the kind of feedback that we really wanted to be able to figure out how these complex relationships could work. Another thing that we used was Google Docs. So one of the things that we wanted to be able to do was allow students to provide feedback at any point of the system. In the module, in the assignments, in the discussions, in the explanation of the assignments. So in this particular one, what you see is that using the Google Docs, they had comment capability. They couldn't edit, but they could highlight something and they could say, I didn't get what you meant by this. And then I could go back I could reply. Once I hit the comment button back, they get an email that says, Dr. Mike replied to your question on assignment number 4 for clarification. And this was much more effective than trying to drill through emails or use TAs or whatever. They got instant feedback. Whoever got to those comments first were able to. And if you're interested, I'm checking out the MOOC, tinyurl.com/LTEC612, LTEC612. I'm starting this MOOC again on July the 5th. That's the first day. It's a 6-week course, a 6-week MOOC. It's a combination. I have registered students and I have free students that take it out of MOOC, and we've tried to marry the two to try and figure out how we could support these systems as well. So if you're interested, it's on online learning. So that's the specialty. I talk a lot about CASA in this particular MOOC. So what are implications for design? Incorporate multiple tools. Promote a positive learning environment. Foster some level of social interaction. Consult stakeholders, develop tech skills, use analytics. So pretty simple ideas about some design capabilities, positive learning environment, social interaction, think about stakeholders, use multiple tools. Well, we did a lot of evaluations as well. So the cartoon is there. So as you can see, customer satisfaction goes up once we eliminate the feedback. Phase out the complaint forms and satisfaction really goes up. Well, we can't do that. We have to have student evaluations, faculty evaluations. We have to look at learning and outcomes, think about enrollment, think about scalability. Does this really scale well? Think about program evaluation. So here are some conclusions from the research I've done over the last 14, 15 years. So this is a synopsis of research and a meta-analysis that we did for another paper of 12 papers, 4 journal articles, 8 proceedings, and 1 dissertation over 12 years, including a 10-year longitudinal study of students in 12 cohorts. All right, so some of the earth-shattering things we found when we looked at flexibility in the learning environment was provided by the availability of multiple tools, and many tools were considered critical for success. We found time and again the students insisted that if they only had one thing to rely on, they would not have been as successful. Establishing strong communities of practice was an important part of their success. And this was not just student evaluations. Remember, this were also faculty, administrator. We're looking at other data points as well. Students valued problem-based collaborative assignments connected to the real world. They wanted real-world assignments. It was most successful when they did it. And reflection through online discussion. So yes, multiple tools were important, but if you took discussion out, then that was really problematic. So evaluation, really important. Also important to have presence, right? Led Zeppelin, presence, sorry, album cover. Some of the different types of presence that you need to have: cognitive presence, okay? Critical thinking, so cognitive presence would be providing content that allows for critical thinking, that allows for problem solving, that understands context. Okay, so this is an important one. A good designer thinks about their audience, so knowing what their prior knowledge is, knowing their age level approximately, the subject category, understanding some of what your students' epistemology might be, and that just means what's their view of your particular content area, or what's their view of the world, and understanding that people with different epistemologies look at what it is that you deliver differently, so you have to understand how to get that information out of them to be able to then address what those needs might be. So think of that as acquaintance knowledge as well. So this is the information that people have learned over time just because of their environment, because of what they've been taught, right? So if we think about acquaintance knowledge, we might think about a father taking a walk with his son. Son is just learning words. The son sees an animal with 4 legs and a tail. What's that? And the dad says, well, that's a cat. Right? Oh, kitty, cat. Okay, and it keeps on in their walk. So that's acquaintance knowledge. I now know that's a cat. I see the dog. The little kid says, kitty, cat. And the father says, no, that's a dog. And so now the son has to process that information cognitively and think, okay, wait, that one was a cat with 4 legs and a tail. That's 4 legs and a tail, but that's a dog. Okay, what's different? All right, okay, dog. And then they get in, there's a horse in the field, and the kid goes, dog, and the dad says horse, and the kid's, all right, I give up, right? So that's acquaintance knowledge. It takes a long time to get that knowledge built into our system, but you have to think about what that is when you design. Teaching presence, obviously, you want to have that presence for teaching. Social presence, you want to be able to use a community of inquiry model, as I said, have students collaborating with each other, working with each other, that student to student, student to teacher, teacher to student, student to content. All of those different types of relationships are really, really important when you think about how to have a robust online learning that really takes into account the success that's needed for your students to do well. So let's have Homer bring it on. I'm not a Zeppelin fan, by the way. No. But that's not really Homer, right? Let's put up the real Homer on there. So bring it on home, Homer. Combination of Homeric ideals and promoting personalized learning and having social presence, thinking about storytelling in a group context, how to make things compelling, how to make them interesting, how to make them significant, viewing your students as ultimate guests, right? Dope, as Homer would say. I mean, it's really not rocket science. So, you know, if you conclude, think about simplifying, think about executing, think about new ideas, incorporating new ideas, incorporating technology, be a good host. I don't really wear suits. Okay? I don't get a lot of opportunity to wear suits, so I thought, I'd try it out today. Most of the time, I'm either in an Aloha shirt, because I'm from the University of Hawaii. One of the nice things about being from the University of Hawaii is that you can go to a formal conference presentation and wear Aloha shirts every day. And at first people are like, that dude's in an Aloha. Oh, he's from the University of Hawaii. He's okay, it's all right. I mean, this is Hawaii, Aloha shirts, right? So we pretty much live in that. But I'm wondering so last poll of the evening, go to that flisty.com one more time, 23, and this time it's QN. And we'll take the mic poll here. All right. Oh, what? That didn't work. Did I do that wrong? QH, not QN. My bad. Thank you. All right. So does the suit suit me? I'm from Hawaii. Should I stick to my Aloha shirts? Am I a t-shirt kind of guy? Or should I try something new? Let's see what we got here. Oh, look at that. We're almost split there. Stick to your Aloha shirts, dude. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Or the suit suits you. Let's see there. Oh, it's the 4-4. Look at that. Still going, still going. It's like split almost evenly. I'm going to see. I told my wife I would ask you all this. She likes it when I wear suits, obviously. I said, well, I don't know. The audience really kind of went for the Aloha shirts. And she's like, really? No, that couldn't possibly be right. So there, look, Aloha shirts is winning. All right, I'm going to stop there while I'm ahead. So there's my page. If you want to go learn more about my research, I wanted to leave about 8 to 10 minutes. Oh, I got almost 10 minutes. I got 10 minutes here for questions. Any questions, any pondering, earth-shattering or not so earth-shattering considerations that you've had about any of the things that I've been talking about MOOCs, whatever it happens to be?
If you're trying to be a good host in a MOOC, and sort of your house, then is hosting potentially a massive number of people who don't know each other and might come to your house for different reasons. What ways of thinking of hosting can you offer?
That's an excellent question, because we struggled with that question. Because once you scale these up, it becomes much more complicated to execute these things in the way that you want to. So one of the ways that we decided by doing that is by having town hall synchronous sessions. and so that I would always be present at these synchronous sessions. We would use a tool that would be robust, that could handle a lot of people at the same time, and we would allow them to Twitter their questions, and I would have an assistant that would go through and grep the questions that he thought were, or gather the questions that he thought that were most significant. That was one way that we could provide that presence, that connection to the instructor. I mean, you know, if Obama can do that with millions of people, why couldn't we do that in some kind of a MOOC format as well? Everyone doesn't get attended to, but I think people feel like it's a social experience, kind of brings them a little bit closer. In addition to that, we use the commenting feature that students could comment on the assignments and that the instructor would be the one that could respond to that. And that commenting, it wasn't so overwhelming that it was hundreds and hundreds of comments, unlike email, which we gather a lot of email. When people use the comments, they use it for very specific capabilities as well. And then also groupings. So one of the other things that we did for discussion is that we just took people randomly and said, okay, we're for the discussion part, we can't have, 200 people commenting to each other on this assignment. So we're going to break you up into groups of 10 to 15, and so you can have these little subgroups. And look at the schedule. You figure out if you're A, B, C, D, or E. Go to that, and then you could do commenting that way as well. But it's a challenge in a MOOC. It's definitely something that we need to consider. Other ways of providing social presence. I mean, I do videos as well, so that people can come in there and listen to the video and then can connect in that way. But there's no replacing the interaction of people in a real-time setting like, we're having now as well. So, well, you don't really know me, but there's more of a connection to me now than if I were ahead on there talking to you about what it is that I just talked to you. The exact same content is different somehow in this setting than in another setting, and we need to understand better how to harness these types of capabilities. Good question. Thank you. Absolutely. So, that's one thing that I had in my notes that I didn't cover, so it's like I paid you to ask that question. Yes, so we just delivered that MOOC in the spring, and we're still gathering. One of the problems that we had with analytics is you get so much data. It's like data overload, right? So it's like the good host, yeah, but the good host was overeating and over-drinking, and so you got to cut it back, and you got to pick and choose what it is. So one of the things that we really wanted to look at and that we asked in our post-evaluation were the reasons why students took the MOOC. So we asked in the pre and post, okay, why did you decide to come here? And then if at the end you filled it out, why did you decide to go through with it? How far did you get? Did you get what you want, right? Was this what you wanted to get? Was it just, were you here just to look at the content? Were you here to do the assignments? Were you here? One of the questions we asked, did you start the MOOC intending to finish it, right? And so we could split the data from people that were intending to finish, compare it to people that, I actually didn't intend to finish, right? So how could we be counting somebody against the MOOC that never intended to finish the MOOC to begin with, right? It's not really looking at the data the way that we could really get the information that we wanted. So yes, and that is going to be our next paper that we're putting together. It's looking at this data. We're looking at it with the team over the summer. We're delivering the same MOOC over the summer. And so at the end of the summer, we're going to take all of that data together and see what it is that we can learn from that. Excellent question. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Mahalo for your time.